Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Throne of Steel episode number 203 based on novel. So let's start. The next moment, a glittering white figure stepped out of the silver light. With only one step, he surpassed the 6 people in front and came to the fallen pillar of the undead. A huge golden vertical eye suddenly appeared in midair. Thousands of golden lights burst into innumerable light, fiercely stimulating on the huge pillar of the undead. The violent explosion and roar lifted the bodies of Chiao Yonghao, Yi Sanmi, and other 6 people back, while the golden vertical eye as high as 100 meters blocked Samijina's desperate gamble by virtue of an eye-catching burst of golden light. The Eye of Brahma. In this situation, there were only 2 people who knew of the Eyes of Brahma. And there was only one who could take Kia as his position and appear here in time. The chairman of the Temple Federation, head of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter Group, owner of Sealed Divine Throne of Eternity and Creation, the splendid Night Temple leader, the Sealed Divine Knight, Long Haochen. Long Haochen let Kia come here alone to challenge Samijina, naturally with countless preparations. Among them, the most important one was the current blow. Between him and Kia, there was a soul chain, and life was shared, therefore when Kia got injured, he would be the first to feel it. He could instantly appear at the side of Kia, which was the power of the domain of Blink. The simple domain of Blink could not transmit Long Haochen that far, but Long Haochen could instantly appear and launch this blow by virtue of his strong spiritual strength and the positioning of Kia when she left. It could be said that this blow was his own mirror image. After all, the distance was too far, he could not really transfer his body here through the domain of Blink, he could only temporarily break the space. Boom! The power of terror erupted in the air, and the pillar of the undead was bombarded upside down by the Eye of Brahma. The light of the golden giant eye slowly converged and was replaced by the proudly arrival of Long Haochen in the eternal armor. At this moment, the momentum of the southeast fortress was immediately raised to the extreme. Through the publicity of magic videos, Kia and Long Haochen were the absolute idols in their hearts. The 2 idols appeared one after another and repelled Samijina, the undead devil god, which could be imagined as an inspiration to their morale. Moreover, Long Haochen's attack was still not over. He raised the golden sword in his left hand, and a little purple and golden light spread in the sword, chopping away toward the swinging pillar of the undead. All of a sudden, a purple and golden blade with a diameter of only more than 10 meters flew straight to the devil pillar in Samijina's hands. The gleaming white sword of eternity in his other hand shone with 9 colors and pointed in the direction of the southeast fortress city. The sky suddenly turned gold. It started raining. The golden rain fell quietly and gently on the head of the southeast fortress. Every warrior and wizard was sprinkled on the body by this golden shower. A layer of light golden glow appeared on their bodies, and the same golden rain, when falling on the devil's clan, emitted puffs of smoke, making the devils give off a mournful scream. It was the light system's forbidden spell, the sacred rain. The sacred rain emitted by the sword of eternity as a magic staff was far more powerful than when Long Haochen used it himself. The golden rain almost covered the head of the southeast fortress. The war situation, which was already extremely critical, was reversed almost instantly after the arrival of Long Haochen. Kia had already brought her Tower of Eternity to Long Haochen, and Samijina, the undead devil god in the distance, seemed to wake up from his madness. And the reason for this sobriety was the purple and golden sword of Long Haochen. The purple and golden light blade accurately hit the pillar of the undead. Previously, even if Kia casted the 6th step, the path of death on the pillar of the undead, it still left no trace, but now it unexpectedly flagrantly opened a huge crack several meters deep on the pillar. The crack was more than 10 meters long, and the terrifying purple and golden color burst out from it. Samijina finally came to his senses when he felt the terrifying aura of destruction. He was horrified to pour the rest of his power into the pillar of the devil. In the loud sound, the section where Samijina's pillar was hit was actually shattered by his own power to move the pillar. At the same time, he fiercely threw his devil pillar into the direction of the devil's camp, while he himself went straight to the direction of Long Haochen and Kia and pounced on them with open teeth and claws. Even if it was the opposite side, Long Haochen could not help but secretly hold out a thumb to Samijina. As soon as he arrived, he found that Samijina was in an abnormal mood, and it was obvious that the success of his own plan had completely driven him into madness. After being attacked by the blood force of Hao Yu, Samijina was able to judge the real situation the moment when he woke up, which could be seen as a powerful devil god. Samijina obviously found that this was not Long Haochen's real body, but a mirror image. That was why he broke his devil pillar immediately by its handle and threw the main body of the devil pillar back to the devil's camp, that was, not to let Long Houchen have the opportunity to destroy his own devil pillar completely. Obviously, his devil pillar would not be completely destroyed after it was broken. Long Houchen secretly felt pity, and the silver light on Kia had reappeared, and the white figure of Long Houchen had become illusory. At this point, Kia was alone in the face of Samijina's attack. Kia hated this guy. Samijina knew well that he would not come to a good end after exercising the devil's disintegration method, so he wanted to use self-explosion to keep his own devil pillar. Kia held her sickle of death high above her head, and her eyes instantly turned white. Not only that, but even her hair and lips turned exactly as white as the power of purification. The sickle of death gave a violent hum, and then a huge white figure appeared behind Kia. Then, Kia disappeared. The huge figure grasped the sickle of death and suddenly looked up at the sky. The sky turned into a vast expanse of white, and everything on the battlefield solidified in an instant. The white figure gradually became substantial. It was a tall, handsome man who looked about 30 years old. His long grey hair hung down, his eyes were white, and he was wearing a white armor. Only on the chest was a diamond-shaped grey gem. Even the devil's army in the distance was completely stagnant at this moment. This was no longer as simple as intimidation, but an indescribable atmosphere of terror. And this aura, even the devil pillars of the devil's clan would tremble. The huge figure, holding the sickle of death, snorted coldly in the face of Samijina, who was frozen in mid-air, and then the sickle of death brought a white electric light in the air. It seemed that in this space, only he could take action. And his chopping was so swift. It was as if heaven and earth had been broken apart in this cut. Samijina, the undead devil god, had a white trace from the top of his head to his lower body, and a large amount of grey air began to emerge from it, and Samijina's eyes were full of fear. The man in white held the sickle of death in his hand, and all the grey air rushed towards the sickle of death, which instantly turned into a circle of white glow and froze in the air. The process seemed slow, but when Samijina's body completely collapsed in the air, and a dead grey crown of devils appeared in the hands of the man in white, the stillness disappeared, and everything was like fragments of memory. At the same time, it collapsed in the hearts of everyone who saw it. What was suspended in the air was Kia. On the other hand, the body of Samijina, the undead devil god, was falling out of the air in two halves. Kia's mournful cry in an instant broke through the final barrier and reached the last step of her 7 deaths, the god of death. When Kia became the god of death, she had the power of death. However, even at that time, she had to pay a terrible price to perform the 7th death. The only thing that could really be used was the first 6 steps, and there was always a gap between her and the 7th step. This gap was due to her lack of self-cultivation, but also because of her lack of understanding. And at this moment, she finished it, she finally finished it. After the Deathly Hallows and the Undead Scourge, Electrolux accepted Kia as an apprentice. The greatest help to Kia was not to improve her practice level, but it was to help her eliminate all the negative effects and counter-agony attached to the Sickle of Death. That was what Electrolux did by the virtue of his own demigod. The God of Death was the 7th step. This was no longer something borrowed from the power of death, but to let the body of Death God really come to the world and launch a blow. And if she used it before Electrolux helped Kia to exorcise the counterattack, the price for her to carry out this blow was her life. This was the power of Revered One of God. If Longhausen had always been the Revered One of Goddess of Light, then, when his practice reached a certain extent, he could also lead to the cohesion of the Goddess of Light and make her come to the world. The God of Death attracted by Kia was not a real body. However, it instantly gathered the aura of death from the whole plane to form one and launched the blow that destroyed heaven and earth. However, it was obvious that Longhausen did not have this ability because his own constitution was already the constitution of God, and the Goddess of Light was no longer enough to become his belief, so it was naturally impossible to summon her. But there was no doubt that Longhausen's own potential was more terrifying, whether it was the power of the eternal armor or his own burning power could reach this order of magnitude. Among the devil gods, Samijina, the 4th devil gods, ranked 4th among the devil's clan's 72 pillars devil gods. When Samijina's body fell from the sky, it fell on dust, turned into dust and dissipated in the air. Both the enemy and the humans could not help but fall into a dull state. As powerful as the devil god, he was killed in this war, and especially after the deification and the devil's disintegration method. This was too much and too shocking for all other devil gods. The vicious devils who were still frantically attacking were as if they had taken some medicine to enhance their ability, and the effect ended instantly. The 4 devil gods stopped attacking immediately and took the lead in flying back. Their target was the pillar of the undead. Samijina, the undead devil god, was dead, and a new one must be born among the 4 of them. Such an opportunity was likely to happen only once in a lifetime. Who would care about dealing with human beings in this situation? As soon as they retreated, the remaining vicious devils were bathed in sacred rain. There was nothing left they could do. The offensive collapsed in an instant, and the strong vicious Devil's clan who had less than 5,000 left retreated quickly and flapped their wings in the direction of the Devil's army. The strong men of the southeast fortress chased out for miles and killed nearly 1,000 vicious devils before returning to the southeast fortress. Kia did not return to the southeast fortress. After she used the last step of death, she fell directly from the sky into the Tower of Eternity and disappeared. The Tower of Eternity fell out of thin air in front of the southeast fortress, and the 100-meter-high tower flashed a faint light of purification, purifying the dead souls on the battlefield, and at the same time introduced these purification forces into the tower for healing and recovery. Withdraw troops and set up a camp. In the distance, the remaining devil gods gave orders to all the tribes of the army almost at the same time. They retreated 20 miles and set up a camp there. Apart from being shocked, they also had their own plans in mind. The battle was a failure, and it was a great one. The Devil's clan suffered the greatest loss, nearly destroyed, and even the commander-in-chief of their army, Samijina, the undead devil god, was killed. And the responsibility for this failure naturally belonged to Samijina. Obviously, the southeast fortress was a super difficult bone to chew, and they all saw the terrifying legal array with their eyes. Who dared to lead a large army to continue to rush up now? What was more, the Devil's army was now tired to death, and their morale was close to mutiny. More than a dozen devils could only gather up the army and made plans after recuperation. What they could do now was to send the battle report here to the God of Devils as soon as possible and ask the God of Devils to make a decision. At the same time, they all knew very well that this southeast fortress might not be able to be defeated. Contrary to the Devil's clan, the southeast fortress was already a sea of joy, and almost all professionals were shouting the names of Longhauchen and Kia. Their heroes saved the southeast fortress and killed the undead devil god. For the time being, the president and vice president's existence in the southeast fortress had been elevated to the height of totems. This battle at the southeast fortress, although the loss was not small, the strongest forces of the devils suffered a greater loss, and the morale of the devils had also been destroyed. It would not be easy for them to have a battle like this again. Chiao Yonghao's excited cheeks flushed and the tiger's eyes were tearful. The victory really showed him the hope that mankind could break through the darkness. The eternal heroes were delighted. From this big victory, they saw the hope of a new dawn. At Yulongguan. With a dull hum, Longhauchen woke up from meditation, and the eternal armor on his body was melted into 13 streamers. A golden light flashed, and Long Waiting also transformed from the Sword of Kings into a human being. Longhauchen relied on the Sword of Eternity and the Sword of Kings transformed by Long Waiting, the Eye of Brahma, which was close to the Imperial weapon, coupled with the fusion of the Domain of Eternity and the Domain of the God of Light, which blocked Samijina's final counterattack. Longhauchen, who looked a little pale, closed his eyes again and immediately went into a state of meditation. Waiting came and sat down behind him, pressed her palms on his vest and poured her pure light elements into Longhauchen's body to assist him in his recovery. Traveling through space, the continuous display of the Eye of Brahma and the sacred rain were a great load on Longhauchen. Although he did not expect Samijina to be so difficult to deal with, he managed to achieve his goal by killing the undead devil god. However, it was a pity that there were no colleagues to destroy his devil pillar. However, as soon as Samijina died, the pillar was hit hard again, and it would be impossible for a new generation of necromancers to have Samijina's original power for 100 years. How did Kia appear in the southeast fortress which was so far away from Yulongguan? This was about the savings of the Temple Union for thousands of years. In this savings there was a space treasure called Location Transfer Scroll. Only one person could be sent to a fixed location at a time. There were only 3 scrolls of this kind of space transfer, and it was by the virtue of this scroll that Kia arrived at the southeast fortress and defeated the most powerful undead devil god. She could have taken more people through her Tower of Eternity, but considering the deployment of the southeast fortress and the great pressure brought by the God of Devils on Yulongguan's side, Longhauchen finally decided to let Kia go alone. After Kia recovered, she would use the second location transfer scroll to return to Yulongguan. Moreover, Kia carried much more than these tasks. She also played a decisive role in this war. To turn the tide and kill the main force of the vicious devil's legal array of light were the work of the eternal heroes. Eternal heroes slept for thousands of years, and they didn't sleep all the time. After all, they all had 1,000 years of life of the undead. Among them, some wizards spent a long time studying some elven magic left by ancient elves. They had really found ways, of which the greatest gain was the existence of a kind of magic trap. The principle of magic trap was very simple. Magic was solidified in a certain position, and at the same time, it was equipped with a guiding device which could be triggered in different ways. It could be triggered immediately when the enemy stepped into the trap, or it could be triggered by a remote control. Relatively speaking, as long as there were enough materials, making magic traps was even more convenient than making magic scrolls. But it involved many of the magical mysteries of ancient elves, which had long been lost in modern times. The Eternal Heroes brought this magic lesson back to Earth and used it on the battlefield at the same time. However, there were only 3 wizards who could set the magic traps. After weighing, Longhouchen decided to let them all set traps on the side of the southeast fortress, although the 6 major professions had been deployed, but the highest strength of each fortress still belonged to this fortress temple. The warrior temple was much worse than the Temple of Souls on the battlefield. Plus, the vicious devils under Samijina were too powerful. Instead of dispersing the 3 wizards' ability to set traps, it was better to bring their strength together to surprise the necromancers and thus completely establish the battle situation of the southeast fortress. Although there were some twists and turns during this period, Longhouchen's combat goal was finally achieved. Under the guarantee of accurate information from Yu Yi, it gave an unprecedented blow to the Devil's clan, and it was also a complete disintegration of the spirit of the Devil's army. It was almost impossible for them to break through the southeast fortress. In Longhouchen's whole plan against the Devil's clan, the battle of the southeast fortress was the top priority, and only by winning this war could they lay the foundation for all the strategies after. If he was not worried that the god of devils might start attacking at any time, he even thought of going to the southeast fortress himself. As night fell, the city tower of the southeast fortress was still brightly lit up, and the strong festivities even released fireworks in the southeast fortress. Under the order of Chiao Yonghao, the officers and soldiers even set up cauldrons at the tower, cooking delicious pieces of meat. Besides being forbidden to drink, the officers and soldiers guarding the city had enough meat and enough food. Yeah. After such an unprecedented victory, how could they not reward the armed forces? As for the Devil's clan, it was much more miserable. With continuous long-ranged attacks in this war, the vicious Devil race's major forces were almost wiped out. The 4 Devil gods were still fighting for the Devil Pillar of the Undead. Although the remaining 300,000 troops were quite large, they were exhausted to the extreme. More importantly, in order to travel at full speed, coupled with Samijina's absolute confidence that he could break into the southeast fortress in the shortest possible time, the army carried very limited supplies. Seeing that it had entered the phase of a long-term battle, more than a dozen devils had to carefully distribute the limited military grain after consultation. While sending people to report to the god of devils quickly, they also sent people back to the central province to collect supplies. And this process would take at least half a month or a full month. However, they could only carry enough military food for 10 days at the most. So, they had to live frugally. Therefore, even if the army of the devil was tired to death, after completing setting up the camp, each devil only ate the equivalent of a bowl of porridge and a steamed bread, no meat or even broth. Having just experienced such a great war, their morale was extremely low and there was not enough to eat. The indignation of all groups in the army could be imagined. However, the mutiny would not occur. After all, there were more than a dozen devils suppressed here, coupled with the army of devils was too tired. Therefore, after eating the meal that was not even half full, most of the devils immediately fell asleep in the camp. There were even some devils who didn't even have a tent and just fell asleep in the wilderness. Fortunately, this was the southeast fortress, not Yulongguan, otherwise, the weather alone might lead to the rapid downsizing of the army of devils. The strategy of the god of devils was actually correct and effective. The strongest elite strength was concentrated on Yulongguan, but only a small quantity. With the strength of all 8th level and above, the environment would not have any impact on them at all. Longhouchen certainly attracted the strongest devils such as the god of devils, the moon devil god, and the star devil god over there. However, similarly, the god of devils also believed that he had generally attracted the 9th level strong of human beings to Yulongguan. He was in no hurry to launch an attack, and one of his purposes was to give Longhouchen time to mobilize the 9th level strong of mankind. The god of devils was absolutely confident. They lost enough strong men, at least without support. How could the southeast fortress and Wan Shoguan resist the attack of his 2 armies? It could even be said that Samijina did not make a mistake. Although he was selfish in terms of military tactics, as long as the attack advanced into the southeast fortress, then all the problems would be solved. Whether it was the god of devils or the devil gods, their biggest mistake was to estimate human beings according to the original strength completely. But they ignored the true meaning of human beings. And they also didn't know of the emergence of eternal heroes. In a sense, this could not be regarded as anything wrong. After all, who could predict this situation? But because of this, it completely changed the situation of the war. The absolute advantage of the Devil's clan began to go downhill gradually. Humans in the southeast fortress were celebrating, and the army of devils was resting while feeling depressed. It was supposed to be a rather quiet night for both sides. But then a restless scene quietly appeared. No one knew when the tower in front of the southeast fortress had disappeared. Although the Devil's clan discovered this point, they didn't pay too much attention to it. Kia must have gone back to the southeast fortress to have a rest after healing her wounds. The night was black, and it might be because there was too much killing today that the light of the stars and the moon was very dim tonight. The clouds were coming, and it was actually raining. However, the Devil's clan were very tough. Even though it rained, the Devil's clan sleeping outside had no intention of waking up. They were so tired that even more than the devil gods fell into sleep one after another. A great war had just ended, and although they were very depressed, they did not expect the human beings to do anything from the southeast fortress. Late at night, the rain became heavier and heavier, and a wolf devil sleeping in a relatively low-lying area was awakened by the rain. Climbing up, the tall bleary-eyed wolf devil looked at the sky and scolded in his heart, thinking that even God was acting against them as it rained in the evening. He looked around. It was obviously impossible to sleep in a tent, but he better found a higher ground, the best to have a shelter to continue his sleep. The continuous fighting made his body sore all over, and there was a deep scar on his thigh. Under the stimulation of the rainwater, it caused tingling pain for the wolf devil. Suddenly, the air in front of him twisted quietly, and then he felt a slight chill in the position of his throat, as if something warm was gushing out of his neck, and all his strength was emptied in an instant. The wolf devil trembled and slowly fell to the ground under the support of a force. In the last moment of his life, he only vaguely saw a black figure flash away. Kia twinkled lightly in the air, and the excellent concealment of her aura made her like a part of the wind. Where she passed, the devils who slept outside were deprived of their lives by death in their sleep. Soon, she went close to the heart of the devil's camp. More than a dozen devil pillars stood there in an orderly manner, but their light was very dim at this time. As for Samijina, the pillar of the undead was outside the camp, where the 4 devil gods were still fighting to inherit the throne of the undead. In order to protect them from being affected, the rest of the vicious devils also concentrated there. After she entered the core of the devil's camp, Kia stopped moving and looked at the sky. Invisible again, she was quietly waiting for something. After a while, Kia's body resurfaced in the air. "It's time," she murmured, raising her right hand and pointing in the air. A white light suddenly surged in the wind and bombarded the largest camps. It was the Tower of Eternity. At the moment of the emergence of the Tower of Eternity, more than a dozen devil pillars lit up almost at the same time, and it was obvious that they also discovered the existence of Kia. They ran out of the camp at full speed, but were greeted by a huge pagoda. "Seal!" Kia shouted, and a strong white glow burst out from the Tower of Eternity, and the bright light bloomed in an instant. Unexpectedly, it covered all the several camps. Then, the volume of the Tower of Eternity also skyrocketed to 100 meters high. It then fell instantly, and unexpectedly shrouded all devils over 10 that had just rushed out, before it fell to the ground. The camp where the devils lived was surrounded by the devil pillars, and when the Tower of Eternity was launched, it drilled through the gap between the devil pillars. Thus it was discovered by the devil gods immediately, but these devil gods never thought that the Tower of Eternity would not attack them, but instead encircled them directly inside of it. This was another wonderful use of the Tower of Eternity. It was called the repression. Boom! 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 There was a loud roar inside the pagoda, and it was obvious that more than a dozen devil gods were frantically attacking, trying to rush out of the Tower of Eternity. But this was a divine weapon. Its firmness couldn't be imagined, coupled with the power of purification which also had a certain restraining effect on the dark attribute of the devil's clan. The devils were cut off the connection between themselves and their own devil pillar. It would take a long time to get out of it. Kia floated up and landed on top of the Tower of Eternity. Holding the sickle of death in her right hand, she drew white lights in the air. At the same time, she sat with her knees crossed on top of the tower, infusing her powerful domain of purification into the Tower of Eternity. The white light in the sky was the signal, referring to a quarter of an hour. The Tower of Eternity suppressed these devil gods, which could last a quarter of an hour. While the purification light of the Tower of Eternity shone, at the same time, in the different directions of the Devil's camp, the lights and shadows were lit up one by one. The warrior temple had a total of 21 strong men of the 9th level, plus all 12 eternal heroes, appearing in different directions of the Devil's camp. As soon as they appeared, they tore open the scrolls in their hands and threw them into the Devil's camp below. The incomparably calm Devil's camp had become a splendid place for bombardment in the next moment. A mass of powerful magic light rose in a ravage of crazy magic elements, engulfing the lives of the Devil's clan. It all happened so suddenly that the Devils were not prepared at all. Those magic scrolls that were quickly torn apart were at least level 7 or more. It was all large-scale magic. For a time, the Devil's camp was instantly in chaos. The terrifying lethality of magic and dazzling glow crazily rose and eventually burst. The Devil's clan was so tired that even after such an attack, many Devils were unwilling to wake up from their sleep. Some woke up after they were covered by magic and when they felt intense pain. This strategy was decided by Long Houchen on the other side of Ulongguan after consultation with federal congressmen, and now the scrolls used by the strong men were naturally accumulated by the Alliance for thousands of years. As the saying went, good steel was used on the blade. Even when guarding the southeast fortress, Jiao Yonghao was not willing to order it to be used. Finally, the greatest power broke out at the time of the camp robbery. Long Houchen's plan could be said to be interlinked. Who would have thought that the southeast fortress would still have the strength to launch a counterattack after such a bitter battle? In particular, the Eternal Heroes, each of whom was strong in the domain, immediately carried out the killing spree after tearing open the scroll, not to mention the combat effectiveness of the 9th level strong men. In the absence of the same level opponents to resist the attack, the lower level enemy was suffering a unilateral slaughter. In particular, after the 3 9th level wizards ran out of scrolls, each also completed a forbidden spell. For a time, the Devil's barracks turned to a sea of blood. And the most crucial point in this war was Kia. She forcibly sealed off more than 10 Devil gods. Otherwise, if they could react when they found out immediately, with the help of the power of the Devil Pillar, they would certainly minimize the loss of the Devil's clan, and even with their overbearing strength, it was not easy for the strong men in the southeast fortress to escape unscathed. Another advantage was that the vicious Devils were not in the camp. Although the main force of the Devil's clan had been wiped out, the remaining thousands of vicious Devils were strong Devils at the 6th or 7th level, plus the 4 great Devil gods. If they were in the camp, at least they could effectively withstand the human sneaky attack. But now they were busy fighting for the right to inherit the undead Devil god's position. The contradictions within the Devil's clan magnified the power of the sneak attack of the strong men in the southeast fortress to the biggest extent. Of course, the vicious Devils were not unaware of the changes here, but each of the 4 Devil gods had their owners. At this time, which one of them was willing to give up the right to inherit the undead Devil god's position? Naturally, they just ignored it and continued with their struggles. The magic wave of the Tower of Eternity was becoming stronger and stronger. Kia had not fully recovered in the first place, and she had become more and more unable to support it. But she knew very well that if she insisted on it for longer, the blow to the Devil's clan would be even greater. Kia was more adept at using the domain of purification, and on the battlefield, she did not need to worry about the lack of resources for power of purification at all. With the death of a large number of Devils, there would naturally appear a huge aura of death which was gradually transformed into a part of the power of purification in the domain of purification. With these, Kia would be able to stabilize the seal of the Tower of Eternity, or otherwise she might not be able to hold on for another minute. After all, it was the joint attack of more than a dozen Devil gods. More than 39th level strong men did not hesitate to attack. They killed the Devils crazily. Among them, several strong men directly destroyed the granary of the Devil's clan, making the already poor logistical supplies even worse. The white light from the Tower of Eternity began to become more and more intense and unstable, with a faint flicker of electric light. Kia knew that this divine weapon had reached its limit, and if it went on, even if she could hold on, the Tower of Eternity would probably be destroyed. This divine weapon was the only memorial left to her by the Deathly Hallows and the Scourge of the Undead, Electrolux. She held her sickle of death high up and a circle of white glow spread. At the same time, the spirit wings behind Kia flapped, flying like lightning into the distance. After holding on for a few seconds, the Tower of Eternity turned into a streamer chasing Kia. When Kia gave off a white glow, a group of strong human beings also stopped one after another, quickly ran away, and returned to the southeast fortress. More than 10 figures rushed out at the same time, but the appearance of these 10 Devil gods at this time was really embarrassing. Their faces were all so dirty. The Tower of Eternity contained a huge force of purification and anti-shock ability. While they were attacking with all their strength, the overdense elements in the Tower of Eternity also had a great impact on them. After struggling for a long time, they were all bewildered after getting out of the tower. And at this time, a white lotus flower fell off. When the devils finally recovered from the blow, and took control of their own devil pillars again and released a powerful force to control the situation one by one, they had the feeling that they wanted to cry, but there was no tear. It was very bad. In the entire devil's camp, there were only a handful of tents that remained intact. There were corpses everywhere. Strong magic elements of the storm were constantly raging. The granary turned into a piece of scorched earth. There were more than 300,000 devils. It was like a plate of loose sand at this time. The stronghold stretching for dozens of miles was destroyed and became out of shape. The loss was too great to count. After a simple discussion, devil gods reached a consensus, and they stepped in at the same time to resolve the dispute among the devils, appointing the chief devil god as the successor to Samijina. They took the devil pillar of undead and retreated quickly. They had to retreat. After the blow tonight, the combat effectiveness of their originally aggressive 500,000 devils was even less than one-third of that when they first arrived, and the key was that there was no morale left at all. Unexpectedly, there were more than 39th level strong people in the southeast fortress, among which there were more than a dozen with strong domain. The number of their enemies' strong men was more than their own side. How could their fight go on? Especially the terrifying Kia. What if she gave them another sneak attack? What would they do then? There was only one way to avoid the seal of the Tower of Eternity, and that was to separate the devil gods. However, there might be problems after the separation. What if they were defeated one by one? Who would want to take the risk? In the end, the result of the discussion of devil gods was to withdraw from Narik province and wait for the order of the god of devils. While readjusting the army, they thought of ways to replenish food. Hundreds of thousands of troops, the amount of food consumed in a day was also astronomical. Later, according to the statistics of the southeast fortress on this war, the total strength of the 500,000 troops of the devils was less than 270,000 when they retreated. Countless devils were injured. It could be said that it got completely defeated by the southeast fortress. The only regret was that only 2 devil gods were killed in the war. However, the danger of the southeast fortress had been completely resolved. Even if this devil army made a comeback, the 6 professions ratios of the southeast fortress would be difficult for them to break through. The morale of the soldiers in the southeast fortress was unprecedented. With sufficient supplies, they soon regained their peak combat strength and could protect this pass. But Kia did not take a rest. After the sneak attack, she and the 12 eternal heroes took advantage of the night to leave quietly and flew straight to Wan Shoguan in the southwest. The war at Wan Shoguan had also begun. And over there, there were no magic traps. 3 days had passed in the blink of an eye. The devil's barracks outside of Ulongguan still remained quiet. Is there any news from Samijina and Marbus? The god of devils summoned Agares, the moon devil god, and Vasak, the star devil god, to his tent. Agares said respectfully, according to the news from the last time, as soon as Samijina arrived at the southeast fortress, he did not let the soldiers rest and immediately launched the offense. According to the reports of the devils over there, the battle has begun for a day, but the vicious devils have not yet entered the battle. At present, there is a stalemate with the southeast fortress. The number of strong men in the southeast fortress exceeded our expectations, and an archer with divine weapon level bow attacked and killed Garbo. Garbo died in the war. What? The god of devils was surprised and said, "Is Garbo dead?" Yes. Moreover, according to the news from the front, Garbo was shot dead before he could play an auxiliary role on the battlefield. Agares' words did not exert any emotion, but anyone could hear his dissatisfaction with Garbo and Samijina. What else? The god of devils suppresses his anger. Despite the fact that arcane devil god Garbo's combat effectiveness was not good, he was the first in Devil's clan in terms of group assistance. His role on the battlefield was so great that it was not much different from that of Samijina. The army that attacked the southeast fortress was deliberately allocated by the god of devils. But he didn't expect that he would get injured and die in this battle. Agares respectfully said, "The news has not yet come, there should be accurate news tonight." There is no news from Marbus and Warlifer at Wan Shoguan. But they have already started. It can be inferred that the southeast fortress battle should end now, and if Marbus and Warlifer are fast enough, they should finish the battle now as well. Vashak said coldly, Your Majesty, Sami Jina seems to have gone too far. It's not good for unity. If he succeeds in invading human territory this time, I'm afraid that the vicious devils. He then stopped and did not continue, and since the last practice of prophecy of life, Vashak's personality had become much more silent, cold, and reticent. The god of devils Feng Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Agares. Speed up the transmission of the message. Yes. The god of devils slowly got up and said, 3 days have come. It seems that it is time for us to meet Longhauchen again. I believe that he should also get the news from the southeast fortress and Wan Shoguan. The moon devil god Agares said, Your Majesty, should we wait for news from the front first? 6 hours at the most, the news should come. After meditating for a moment, the god of devils said, All right. Let's wait for the good news from Sami Jina and Marbus. He didn't seem to hear the objection raised by the star devil god before. Vashak didn't talk about it either. The situation on the front line was very important to this side. If the two armies were to enter the temple union, then the god of devils would hold an absolute dominant position. If they failed to break in, then the tactics of the god of devils against Yulongguan would be changed accordingly. This video will end here.